The Man Cave is an organisation working to improve men's mental health by helping boys to manage their emotions at a young age. It's a crucial time in their development. 3/4 of mental health issues in men emerge before they turn 25, and 1 in 5 young men experience anxiety or depression before they turn 18. The Man Cave provides role models to help equip boys for life's inevitable challenges. Founder of the Man Cave, Hunter Johnson, joins us now. Hunter, thank you for your time tonight. As we said, your focus is on helping young men, particularly boys, is still at school age, so you're trying to get in early. Why is this such a crucial age for boys?
Well, we work with boys at the ages of 12 to 16, and we know that they're the most formative times when they're constructing their identity. And the most important thing for us is exposing them to a diverse range of role models, from guys from, your classic Melbourne hipster to your salt-to-the-earth country bloke, to a former refugee, to a former child soldier, who are all there to share their own experience around being a man with these boys. And that positive role modelling often gives the safe space, as Jack was just alluding to, gives the permission for these boys to start opening up and develop some language, and also gives the confidence to continue the legacy of the work that we're creating with these boys in those formative years, all throughout their teenage years, as we know they're the most turbulent times for young people, but particularly young men at that age of 12 to 16.
And what are some of the main issues they're facing at that age?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, we've obviously dealing with puberty. We've got the changing body of a young man. We've got the social pressures of trying to fit in and belong with their peer group. But we also know that social media plays a really intense role in these young people's lives, particularly if there's bullying going on at a school. No longer does bullying stop at the flagpole. It often comes home on social media. We even have kids, recently, last week, a boy was sharing that his YouTube account got hacked. And that was a bit of an insight for our team that that's 21st century bullying. But what we're seeing as well is a lot of these young people are constructing their identity and their self-worth based on how many likes and how many followers they have. And they're kind of putting a mask on and showing the world one side of who they are and keeping their own independent, separate self away from the mainstream. So we're seeing these young people trying to filter their existence. And what's really missing in all that is the space for them to be their authentic self, where they don't feel like they have to show up in an inauthentic way to try and get some external validation that they're enough from social media or from their peer group.
And what's really interesting about that, hearing you speak there, is that the boys are giving you just as much insight into what's going on for them. And you have worked now with thousands of boys across hundreds of schools and training mentors to connect with them, to get them to open up. Before we talk more about that, let's take a listen to what some of the boys have had to say about Man Cave and the impact it's had on them.
What I've learnt today is that it's important to talk because you may get hurt even more if you just keep it inside and just bottle it in a jar.
I tend to hide my problems, but the Man Cave has taught me you should probably talk to someone because that's some of the best things that you can do.
It's amazing hearing that firsthand from those boys. You're obviously having a huge impact at Man Cave. One of the questions you ask the boys in your workshops is what a real man looks like. Tell us what they come up with.
Yeah, well, part of the design of our workshop is giving the boys the space to question their social conditioning, which is effectively the rules that they've inherited around what it means to be a man. And again, the real art of what we do is not make anything wrong. We're not moralising boys or telling them what's good or bad, but just creating the space where they can question the belief systems and the rules that they've inherited that sometimes they might police other boys about. And one of the very first activities we'll get them to do is write down on Post-it notes, what does it mean to be a good man? And they'll write down, to be courageous, to be strong, to be trustworthy, to be kind, and they'll post it up all anonymously on a wall. And the next exercise we get them to do is we ask them, what does it mean to be a real man? What are you seeing around you? What's being role modelled? What's in your world? And remember, this is completely anonymous, so no one's going to know what you write. And as they put these Post-it notes up, they're laughing their heads off because they've been given free rein. And inevitably what comes up, whether we're working in a small dairy farm town of 200 people or to some of the highest density populations in Australia, the results are often the same. To be a real man is to be tough, to be strong, show no emotion, be buff, just deal with stuff, suck it up. Often don't be gay comes up. And as we describe this to the boys and we're reading them all out, they're laughing their heads off. And we say, but seriously, what's going on here? What are we seeing? And they say, well, we know on the good man side, that's what we're supposed to be. That's quite aspirational. But on the real man side, you know, that's what we're seeing around us. And, yeah, wow, it's the first time we've questioned that. We'll then ask the boys, say, OK, with that being known, who's ever felt pressure to be any of those things before on the real man side? And without a doubt, 50 hands will go up every single time. And we'll say to the boys, you know, what's one example for you? And a boy will say, oh, listen, I haven't hit puberty yet and I get called gay all the time because I'm not as big as the other blokes. And it actually really affects me. And the reason it affects me so badly is because it now comes home on social media, you know, guys not only at the tram stop but on my Instagram account, and I feel like trapped. I can't get out of this. And then we'll stop the program and say, who knew this kid felt this way? And there'll be no hands in the room. And we'll go, who's got enormous respect for this guy for sharing so courageously? 50 hands will go back up. And then we'll ask the boys, what do you respect so much about that? They go, oh, it's quite vulnerable. It's quite tough to be so courageous. But, like, yeah, massive respect to you, mate. That takes a lot of courage. And then we'll say to the boys, you know, who's actually called him gay before? And without a doubt, every time we'll get 5 hands up in the air and they'll stand up and make an apology to this boy specifically for what they said, the impact on him, and then what they're committed to in that relationship going forward. And for both of those kids, whether it was the kid who was bullying or the kid that was on the other end, that creates a different trajectory for their high school years. Not only that, we also know those kids who do identify as LGBTI, their statistics on mental health are exponentially higher than people who identify as straight. So it's super important we have moments like that in the classroom.
And hearing you talk, it's evident that the impact it has on them at that age is going to carry through with them for life, and so we're changing the next generation of men. At the moment, we know that you are doing this work in Victoria and you plan to move into New South Wales and eventually nationally. To do that, you pitched to the Funding Network this week. Now, that is crowdfunding for social enterprises. You walked away with about 90 grand. What do you plan to do with that money?
Yeah, very exciting week for us at the Man Cave. We've worked with you know, thousands and thousands of boys across Victoria, and despite no direct marketing ever, we've had hundreds of expressions of interest of schools across the world, which really comes down to our expert facilitators, who are effectively the most important asset in our business, and we invest heavily in their personal and professional development. And we've been fending off schools because we're so intentional around building our model sustainably and scaling really intentionally. And very exciting this week, we're in Sydney on Wednesday night as part of the Funding Network, which was supported by the AMP Foundation. And I had a live pitch to a packed-out crowd of 200 people, and was very, very lucky to walk away with $92,000 to set up our New South Wales arm of the Man Cave. So the goal with that is to fund the personal and professional development of 15 diverse male facilitators who can go into high schools across New South Wales and get the important work out to the communities who need it most. And, you know, we're really excited because of that. Just last week, I actually got an email from a mother who said, listen, what can you do to get here? I really need you to come to New South Wales. And I said, listen, we've got this opportunity on Wednesday night. And she said, great, I'll even pick you up from the airport. That's how excited I am. So I'm looking forward to working with that that mother and that young man.
That is extraordinary. Yes, we all, us mothers of sons, we all need you, and the whole country does too. You're doing extraordinary work for the next generation of young men. Hunter Johnson, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Jacinta.